We've got another great show for you today. Holly Carlson's back for our third interview with her, and we're looking forward to it. She's going to talk about when she was at the Flag Land Base and then when she eventually left Scientology, right, Janice?
Oh, yes, that's right, Mark. This is a good one. This should help answer a lot of questions for second geners and parents.
That's right. That's right. And we're going to talk about parenting in the Sea organization and out of the Sea organization as well. So stick around. Here's the show. Aloha, everybody. Welcome to our channel, Scientology, Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher. I'm here with my fantastic co-host, Janice Gillum-Grady. How you doing today, Janice?
Good, Mark. G'day, everybody. And great day today. And it's great that we got Holly back. This will probably wrap up our series with Holly, but this one will be a good one because it hits on a subject that affects so many people emotionally, you know, because it regards kids, raising children in the Sea Org, and as a parent, what you need to do to take care of your kids and protect them. So I'm excited for this one.
That's great. Well, without further ado, here's our guest, Holly Carlson. Hi, Holly. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. We're really happy to have you back. It's very hot here. It's over 100 degrees finally here in Vegas. So
you're ahead of us. It's something like 92. So we're
yeah, but do you have the hot 90% humidity too, or no?
No, actually, we don't. It's been pretty dry. So we
haven't
predicting rain, but we don't get it. So
she went for her swim this morning. That gave her 100% humidity.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
I did, yes. It was a good swim.
Well, where we left off on our last part 2 of our interview, you had just arrived at the Flag Land Base in Clearwater, Florida. You had previously been the commanding officer in the Western United States and then was removed and put back on and yada, 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 right? We went over that. But then you arrived because your husband was brought to Clearwater to be the technical secretary at the Flag Service Org, which is the biggest organization in Scientology. It's where they deliver all the upper level stuff, and it's the biggest money maker for Scientology. So we just thought we'd ask, let's start there and carry on through until when you left Scientology, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So when you got there, you were in action, right? You were a missionary.
I was, because I had some experience before. I guess they decided they could use me in there. I was thinking about this earlier today and having some memories of what transpired when I was working in the Action Bureau with John Horwich. I remember him saying, and he may remember telling me this, we had this long office, and I think there was somebody off to my right, and John was at the far end of the long office with his desk, and it was always in the dark. We each had our own little lamps on our desks, but the rest of it was dark, kind of like it had been on the ship, which I thought, okay, this is Horwich. And he was a fun character and joked a lot and stuff. I imagine he still is. I mean, as far as I know, he's still with us, lives in Chicago or somewhere. But anyhow, so I became one of his mission ops, and I think Lance, somebody.
I know who you're talking
Whalen
about. Yeah, Lance Whalen. Yeah, and then was Jim Veneer? Was Jim Veneer in there too?
Yes, but not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
No, I'm going to say up front that there will be sequences I will get wrong. I just don't have that memory anymore.
And this was in the Clearwater building, the old Clearwater Bank building, right? Because we only had 2 buildings at that time: the Fort Harrison, where people lived and worked, and the Clearwater building.
Right. All these really funny memories are coming back now. Yep.
There you go.
The CBE was the Clearwater.
Time place form event.
Sorry, the Clearwater.
Hey, Holly, let me ask you this. Typically, when Janice's husband Paul worked in the Action Bureau, which ran missions worldwide at the time, They were on a night schedule. Were you on a night schedule too during
No,
those days, or was it daytime? Okay.
everybody was on a day schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember night schedules happening at the Clearwater base.
It probably
might have stayed up, but I don't recall it being
action,
like on the ship.
Probably because action for CM Commoner's Messenger was on the West Coast. That was 3 hours different. So you could actually run missions
That might have been
from the East Coast to Europe and Africa and all that. And it wouldn't
Yeah.
really matter if you were up late all night. Yeah.
I never knew what went on out there because that was always this big mystery of who was out there and where was out there. We didn't know where out there was. It was still very, very hush hush and all of that. But there I am in the Action Bureau, and I'm on mission ops, and John's sort of training me as I go. I mean, I'd had some experience, but now he's training me some more. And he used to say, you know, project missions, they're the ones that'll get you in trouble. And boy, was he right. I don't know when this came up, but in the sequence of missions that I ended up running, but one of them was called Secretive Flag Results.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Was that ever a bloody disaster? So Lizzie and Carl were sent on this mission to set this thing up to release this movie called Secretive Flag Results.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a movie, right? I remember the title, but I don't remember what it was.
Movie. There was a mission probably to set it up. There were different. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to remember all the details. All I know is it was a complete flop and it was a disaster. Like nobody showed up. It was supposed to show at the Palladium.
Oh, you mean like it was a big premiere, like a big event?
Big premiere, the premiere of the Secretive Flag Results.
And no one showed up.
Who shot that? Janice, who shot that movie? Was that a Unimed production or?
Yeah, that was Unimed, and I think wasn't it Richard Nunley who was the actor in that?
I think you're right. Right. I just don't remember the movie. I remember the name.
That might have been another something. I don't recall that name. I remember the name in social media today, but I don't know who that is. All I know is we sent out, and I don't know. I'll have to ask. I should have asked Carl because that would give me more information. All I know it was a disaster, and I got commented. Committee of evidence, folks, is you failed at something, and so now you have this committee that has to determine what went wrong and who made it go wrong and what their punishment is, basically.
Right. So you're saying you fired a project to release that film, and they were going to release it in the
Palladium
on Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, and no one showed up.
I don't know how many people showed up, but it was not the 3,000 people that they expected into this huge thing. You know, again, I'll be wrong. Somebody listening will know a lot more about this. Welcome to make the comments or appear on your show. All I know is it was a disaster. It did not.
Right. Okay.
And, you know, what are you going to do? You can't. They did everything they were told to do. They did their mission orders. Everything was done the way it was supposed to do. But look at it, folks. Who the hell wanted to see that? You know, oops.
Yeah, it was supposed to be, from what I remember, a movie that could then be put on the Flag World Tour that toured around to different organizations to get people to come to Clearwater for services, right? That was the whole purpose of the film. And they were going to road show it around, I think, right?
And of course, we believed in it. You know, we believed that this could even happen. You know, hindsight being what it is, we realize how. Remember at the end of the last discussion we had where I said it was all a lot of fantasy and everything. It was a lot of fantasy, except we believed it. You know, well, 50 odd years later or whatever it is now, 42 to be exact. You know, we can see that how ridiculous it was.
It also was embarrassingly bad. I mean, the quality was not like a Hollywood production. Just like the music that was done on, you know, like the Apollo Stars, the Power of Source. It sounded so ridiculous. And it actually was cringeworthy to go, I'm really proud of this, but then you'd hear it and you go like, what am I proud of? This doesn't
What
make
am I
any
listening
sense.
to?
Yeah,
Well,
right. And it was the
you
same with
remember,
films
somebody
that were
else
done,
probably talked about this, but do you remember that music was supposed to be something that would register with the Aboriginals there? The natives?
I only grew up with the music on the ship and listening to those guys, and it was like, maybe there's something wrong with my ears.
Everybody thought that.
People liked it, but I thought I had a problem because I didn't like it. And
years later, when we had a little reunion, and there was Wenlox and Neil Sarfati and a bunch of us we're talking about, and we're just all just cracking up because it was just so ridiculous. And Neil was one of the musicians.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was something else. Anyway, we sidetracked ourselves. So that was one of the missions that I had to do, project mission, and it failed, and we all got ComEv'd, and I don't know what the outcome of it was. But I still had my COCON status. So I think this part's really funny. I think it was on that particular ComEv where I'm like, I don't know what to do. Was it that one? Yeah, I don't know. I'm certainly not going to grovel and do these lower conditions and things like this for something that, it just didn't fly. People didn't show up. They weren't interested. Yes.
Yeah, I just was going to explain for our viewers what COCON status is. That was something that L. Ron Hubbard put out, saying that, in whatever, Genghis Khan, or I don't know, remember what.
I don't know.
If you did something that was really, really fantastic for the organization, you could be assigned the status of COCON. It's KHAKHAN. And that meant that you basically were forgiven, was it 10 lives?
10 lives.
Yeah, 10 lives. But you could get in trouble and lose a life as part of it. Yeah. And then so you had 10 of these. So you had what was called ethics protection. And of course, they ignored these things later on, but that was what you were talking about when you said you had your COCON status. Yes, Janice.
Let me give an example of how someone with COCON status can be treated when someone is really mad at them. I'm sorry to interrupt what you were saying, Holly.
No, not at all.
But Dan Albach had been LRH's audio-visio on the ship, and he did all the editing of the Waller tapes and all that kind of stuff. And LRH had awarded him with COCON status. And then one day, Dan had pissed him off so much that I had message runs, and every message run was basically to say, "You just lost another life." And then I'd go back up and tell the reaction. And then I was like, go back and tell him he lost another one. Until he had no lives left. And it was all 10 were taken away in one day.
Yeah.
That's
in one day. Oh, geez. That didn't happen to me, thankfully. But when you have this committee of evidence and you have to make your amends and you have to clean things up and whatever. So I said, I'm not going to waste time groveling around and doing liability, whatever. I don't even remember what condition. I'll just toss a life, So I petitioned to Ken Urquhart, who was LRH personal communicator. So I sent a petition up to him, and I said, I've just had this ComEv, such and so's been determined with it, and that apparently I ran a bad mission, whatever it is, but I am a COCON, so I'm willing to give up a life. And he writes back to me, and this is the funny part. He writes back, he accepts it, but he writes back saying, okay, then so you have 8 lives. I wrote him back. I said, what do you mean? Like I should have 9. I only gave up 1 for this. I think it's worth 1. And he writes back again and goes, oh, sorry, I was thinking of the cat. Oh my God. Okay, fine. So I got through that one.
That's funny.
So yeah, so that was the one mission, the first mission, I guess, that went, haywire. The first project mission. There were a number of them, and I don't remember them all. But the next most interesting one was you know, it's another one of those things where I know nothing about the subject, and yet I'm in charge of it. And this subject is to rebuild the CB because it burned down.
Oh, the
Oh,
fire.
I don't know anything about building things.
Yeah.
You know what's funny
Well,
about that? I arrived after that, after the rebuild was done. So I never knew how it burned down. I finally found out in Mike Rinder's book last fall that Kathy Rinder was the one, his wife at the time, who was blamed for starting the fire because she put some stuff up in a closet and it started the fire.
Oh, I don't know why there's balloons flying. I guess because I put
Congratulations!
Mike's book confused me there because Kathy Rinder's products that were on the mirror were underneath a light in their Fort Harrison room, not the CB.
So how did the fire start the CB?
No, somebody's going to have to correct this because either my memory is bad or Mike's was wrong. I don't know. But I remember here's what I remember. I'm sleeping in the Fort Harrison. It's fairly early on. No, I do have it mixed up. But I do remember this. I'm sleeping in the Fort Harrison. We had a room on the 5th floor, and we had been up late at night. And suddenly, I'm sleeping. We must have done some night shifts, I guess. I just don't really remember it. But all of a sudden, all the alarms are going off. I thought it felt like World War II or something. The sound of those sirens going off in the whole hotel. And I think I don't know what that fire was. It might have been the same one. I don't know. Anyway,
because there wouldn't be a fire in the Fort Harrison. This was the fire in the CB.
Whatever happened in the it was in the Fort Harrison, and whatever happened, it must have been taken care of right away, or it was a false alarm.
Oh, so that's a different fire.
It just happened. I have a memory of being woken up, dead, sound asleep, and all of a sudden these blaring things go off, and we have to all exit the building and walk out into the streets, and then it was enough. But as for what happened to the CB, I'm not sure. Mike thought it was what Kathy did. Maybe it was, and maybe I'm wrong. But I'll tell you, so many things happened there that could destroy a person's memory.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not at all surprised. I'm not at all surprised that I don't have a good memory. Life was constantly on a tightrope.
Right. I want to interject something about what Janet said earlier. This is Dan Arbach right there with L. Ron Hubbard. I found this photo last week. He's the guy who lost 10 lives, right, Janice?
I remember him.
I had to dig this photo up because I found it last week.
Yeah, I remember his face, and I think he's the guy that packed up everything on the 11th floor into a truck to move it somewhere. But maybe I'm wrong about that too, because they just maybe look like, I don't know.
But I'll tell you, he was an incredible musician, and LRH used to say he had 10 ears. But this was a guy who was an accomplished musician. 10 ears.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah, but Dan's music, I could listen to that because it sounded like real music. Wow. And after he left the Sea Org, he still did music and became a music teacher and performed in different bands. He passed away about a year or two ago.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, he played the mandolin, right, Janice? He was a really good mandolin player. Yeah.
Yep. Well, sorry to hear that. I know you know about any of our old friends. You know, it happens. So
back to the CB fire.
Back to the CB. So I had to run the mission. This is ridiculous. Here's this skinny little girl going over there and supervising these contractors working on building the building. It was like embarrassing. I'm over there with my little notepad and clipboard and all this.
So you were on the mission. You weren't running the mission.
I was the mission ops running this thing.
No, you were going to see what the progress, because it was right across the street.
It was a project I was running as both mission ops and I don't know. Janice, that's a good question. All I know is this is absurd.
Okay.
This little girl talking to these contractors who are building what was it, a 2-story building? I mean, it's a huge office building, not gigantic, but a big office building. And there's this person. Yeah.
I would have to assume you were on the project because a mission ops would not get involved with contractors.
Not normally, no. I don't know why I would be on the project and then also running missions. That's the thing, because I was doing them both at the same time.
Well, the thing is, though, Janice, it was right across the street. So if you're running the mission, why wouldn't you go look at it so you could see the progress? You know what I mean?
Exactly, but it's against flag order.
Yeah, but those contractors didn't have mission orders or project orders or anything. So I don't know. I really don't remember how that went. It just was one of those ridiculous things where you're expected to do the bloody impossible stuff that is not. And this was not uncommon. People, Hubbard's mantra way back was, you can do anything, had it or not, trained or not. You're operating Thetan. You're an OT. You can do anything. And of course,
you've done it before.
You've done it before, a billion years ago, whatever it was. But you can do this because you're a Sea Org member and blah blah. And if you doubted that, you were in serious trouble. Ethics trouble. You were in serious trouble if you had expressed any doubts. Seriously, there was a lower condition of doubt.
Yeah, because you didn't make it go right.
If you voiced it, you could be considered an enemy or in treason.
Well, and if you think about it, though, that's what people did in the Sea Organization. Janice and the people on the Apollo had never been on a ship before, and yet they're going across the ocean. You know what I mean? And I'd never once done anything with a recording studio, and yet here I am overseeing the recording of music. You know what I mean? It's just expected of you.
That is a true demonstration of make it go right.
That's right.
Well, of course we can do that, and we've now been around the block a few times. All of us, we're not our little spring chicken selves that we were 40 years ago.
No, and it came in handy.
We learned some things.
But I'm not gonna really spout, this is why we're successful, but it did come in handy after we left the Sea Org. I know Janice, we'd never been in the mortgage business, and I know Janice used to say, I can do this every day she told herself that going into the office every day, right, Janice?
Well, that was after I'd been with all you guys and I was going off on my own, and I'd never been on my own. So every day driving to my own little office, I was painting walls and moving desks and everything and promoting. And I would tell myself, I can do this. Every day driving in, I can do this without anybody else.
Well,
I did.
You had some fortitude I don't think I had, because I'll tell you a little side story from some years later. When I did leave, I was absolutely afraid of ever running into any Scientology people at all for 25 years. 24 and something, because my sister and her husband had been sought out, tracked down. Their phone was bugged. They were harassed. There had been other members who had left who were run off the road.
Yeah.
They could have been seriously hurt, if not killed. There was another member whom I knew who was left to die in some circumstance. He was still a member, and there was an accident. And rather than have a shore flap, the people he was with left him, and he ended up dying. And it's just, I knew nothing about that until decades later. But when I left, my sister had warned me, and a brother of mine had also left. And that was in 1980, 81. And they told me on the phone. Now, I could have gotten in serious trouble just talking to them, because the fact that they had left meant that they were suppressive persons. And certainly Terry Armstrong, he was suing the church. And
he was your brother-in-law.
My brother-in-law. So I thought, wow, this is very where did I get to? Anyway, it was very frightening. I had little kids after I left. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm walking them to school because I don't know that somebody up there in Detroit isn't going to, we live in the suburbs of Detroit, isn't going to come and scoop them up or, threaten them or something, and I was just scared. So I had no contact with anybody except for Vicki Lewis. We wrote letters back and forth. She had a couple little girls, and Toby Young, I wrote some letters with. And after the first year out, the collection person, she used to write letters asking me to send money and stuff. But so other than those people, I had nothing to do with Scientology at all. Didn't want to know anything. Just wanted to get on with life and have a normal life and learn how to live in the real world, which I knew nothing about.
Right.
But okay, so there's that. Back to Flag, and there was good reason for it. I mean, by the time I did go to school, after my kids were old enough, I hadn't had education beyond high school, as I mentioned before. Well, although I had become a secretary working something, I was afraid to do that. I was afraid to go take a job because I didn't know how to talk to people. I didn't speak English. I spoke Scientology. Right? And then
don't bother
I
me
know.
with Dev T. Don't bother me with this Dev T. Write a chat on that.
I wouldn't have used those words either. I just didn't know how to talk to anybody because I didn't understand the real world. So then I when the kids were old enough for me to go do anything else, I did go over to the community college and started taking some classes, and I was going to be a computer programmer and all that because I happen to dig that stuff. And shortly after that, I decided, no, I'm going to do nursing school. But when I first went in there, I was scared to death that I wouldn't be able to measure up as a student in a community college.
Wow.
I just thought I was not bright at all and not bright enough to do this. And I was afraid. Here I go.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I felt the same way. It's like I did 6th grade. That was why, but I'm a 6th grader.
Well,
I did know high school.
Yeah. Part of my background before Scientology, we moved around a lot. I lived in 9 different homes in several different communities between Michigan and Western New York. I went to 12 different schools in 12 years. All of that moving around, I had no roots, no collection of friends. We didn't have a church. We didn't do any normal kid activities in my little large family of 6 kids. So I didn't even have that foundation before I went off to Scientology. So when I came out of Scientology, I just didn't, it was hard. Here's another funny story. I'm sorry, but I got to tell these things because it helps.
No, go right ahead. I'm really enjoying this.
Things would why it just, it paints the picture of what it's like. Keep in mind, folks, that when you get in so young, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, it just is that way. And as a teenager, I never even went to a prom. I never did anything. So when we got out, about a year later, maybe, I joined the JC Women in the little town of Harper Woods, Michigan. There's a bunch of women doing volunteer work and stuff. I thought, oh, cool, I'll do this. Well, within the year, they elected me the president. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do anything. Don't make me the president. It's like, anyway, it was scary. So then, anyway, I settled down and I had the ladies over to my house and we're sitting around the kitchen table having our coffee and talking about what we're going to do. And so I start making targets. I start making targets for these people, right? And they're going, how are these things to do? Yeah, take it easy. I had deadlines and stuff. I started talking about this. And the one friend that I had who had confided this Scientology history, she goes, we don't do it like that. These people are volunteers. Oh, okay.
They didn't realize that you would run all of Western United States for Scientology, all the organizations.
No, but the point is the real world doesn't operate the way we.
No, I know that.
No.
I know, I get it. Yeah.
So anyway, it was just, I was so nervous about running this little meeting, this little volunteer ladies meeting. I mean, I got through it pretty quickly and all of that, but those are my initial feelings when coming out of this, the thing I had lived and worked in for 15 years, and the only subject I knew was Scientology. Right. I mean, also my high school education was nothing. It was all secretarial stuff because I didn't stay long enough in any area to develop a college prep type program at all.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So I didn't have that. All right. So back to Flag on Mission Ops, and we had a good time in there. I remember Horowitz running the LRH birthday game that we'd have, running the deciding what we're going to buy LRH each year for his birthday. We had Jim Veneer was there, and they had some interesting stories that they would tell and I would listen to. And then at some point we had John Nelson, and you'll remember John Nelson.
Yeah.
Little John Nelson.
Oh, Little John.
No. There was a little one. This is Big John Nelson.
John with the beard.
Yeah, okay. The one who looked a little bit like he belonged in a Bible. I mean, he was very handsome, had this beard and kind of longish hair.
Future CO, CMO, and WDC chairman.
That's right. Yes, he did.
And he was married to Julie before you married
That's right. Her. He was married to my wife before before I married her. Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't have known what happened to John after there because he went off to the secret place out in California. Right. So I wouldn't have known about that. But he was our mission preps guy for a while.
That's right. Suddenly he was
gone. Suddenly he was scooped up and gone. So then let's see. This is where sequences elude me, but I would be sent on these missions. And one mission I was sent on was to the UK to do something with Mission Office Worldwide, affectionately called MODUB. Right. MODUB. And I don't remember what we had to do. But
the Mission Office Worldwide ran all the missions. Well, they didn't actually run them. They collected their 10% tithes from them. And if they needed help, they gave them help for the mission holders.
I don't recall what the mission actually was. I think there was a guy, Mike Eldridge was my second missionaire.
No, Mike.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, he was my second, and somebody else came along as an insurance missionary or something like that. We had an insurance missionary. Anyway, I don't remember what the mission was we were supposed to do. I think it was prelude to the what was that mission holder thing that they had?
Are you talking about before was it before the Guardian's office takeover when they got rid of the Guardian's office, or was it the David Mayo, the mission holder conference?
It was not the mission holder conference.
Okay.
God, I can't remember the name of this thing. There was a change in how the missions were going to be run.
Right. They were. Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. So it was going to change from the MOWW Mission Office Worldwide was run by the Guardian's office, but it was going to change to Scientology's Missions International, SMI. Right?
That's it. SMI.
Scientology Missions
International. I couldn't think of the acronym. I couldn't think of the word.
And they were going to move it to Clearwater.
Oh. Well,
they did.
That wasn't part of my mission orders.
Oh, wait. No. I'm wrong. Roger Barnes and Sandy Barnes, they went to England. I remember because we interviewed Sandy about this.
Okay. That was not part of my mission, but it might have been prelude. My mission might have been prelude to that or something like that. I don't remember. It's tragic that I don't remember. Here's the thing I do remember from that trip, besides I remember a couple of things that I, one, didn't know really what I was doing, and two, actually there's three things. It was pitch black. There was everything shuts down over there at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
And it's in the country.
It's out in the sticks. And we miss the last taxi into wherever we were sleeping.
East Grinstead or,
the B&B that we were staying in. We missed the last taxi, so we have to walk. There's no moon. There are no street lamps. There are no stars. There's nothing. Michael, If you ever run into him, you'll remember this. We're stumbling along in pitch blackness, hoping that we're going in straight lines. But we got there. And yeah, so there was that. We actually had decent breakfast there too. The guy used to make us these lovely breakfasts. So I was there for a mission. What was the other one? Oh yeah, there was the I've lost it. It's probably not all that important anyway. There were a couple of people there. One of them was from California, San Luis Obispo. She was from, I remember, she was American, but everybody else was from somewhere else. And there was this guy,
Right.
boy, you're really in the fire chair, aren't you? He says. He was from Austria. I said, you mean hot seat?
I used to love how the Europeans would mess up the different words in a sentence, and they always had us in stitches.
Our idioms. It was nice. Anyway, we had a good time. Oh, the other thing was Alex Castillo suddenly shows up, and he's on some mission over there, and I don't know what it was, but different from ours. And we all end up at dinner together, and we're at some Indian restaurant, and we're having vindaloo. And he says, have vindaloo, or he tells me to have vindaloo. For those who don't know, vindaloo, and I love Indian food today. I had never had it before, but we used to have this weird sort of curry back at USLO. But anyway, he says, have the vindaloo, and it's this beef. Mine was anyway. I think they can make it with lamb, with this seasoned sauce, and it's extremely, extremely spicy, hot.
Oh.
And it's on rice, and I'm like, whoa! It's like blow your eardrums out. Anyway, so I remember that. It was fun. Well, Alex is Mexican, so he was used to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so we got that mission done, and then the turnaround, I get back, and the turnaround is now I'm sent to France, to Paris for whatever. And here's another crazy. Missions are graded on the 6-week statistics after the mission.
Right.
While I'm there and after I'm back, by then I'm sent out to PAC, which we'll get to in a second, the stats skyrocket. I've got a flag distracting me here, I'm sorry. And so on the 6th week, I remember this mission. It was great. It was fun. There was Hank Lar, who's there, and and some other guys that I remember. Guillaume wasn't there, but his wife was. She was my second. And anyway, the stats skyrocket. The org goes into power. Everything's lovely. On the 6th week, the stats crashed. So I get comment again.
Oh, no.
It's like, are you kidding me?
Did you still have a life left?
All rising stats, and on the 6th week, something happens, and the stats crash, and I'm somehow responsible for that.
Did you have a Kalkan life left?
Oh, let's see. I gave away 2 of them for something. I don't remember. I think it was the 3rd ComEv that I had on flag for.
After the building or whatever.
Well, all right. I better speed it up because now we only have 30 minutes left, and there's a lot to tell. So anyhow, so I'm on that mission, and this is where we can kind of bridge into what happens with family members when they're with families who have children and their parents are being sent to places like this and are in high-powered positions. So by that time, my husband is the commanding officer of the service organization. So he's responsible for all these people that are paying mega bucks. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars for services. He's responsible for that organization. Right. I'm being sent around on missions. I have a young daughter who's between the ages of 6 and 10, 7 and 10, and a son who's between 2 and 4, and now I haven't got the infant yet, the last one. And so this is just, it's untenable. It's impossible to do what you have to do. So we had Jean Smith, who was in the FBO, the Finance Network. Her little girl was best friends with our little girl. And so Jean took care of Jennifer for me and for Carl. And Carl is running the FSO. And I'm sent out to PAC again because PAC has collapsed. So they send me out on a garrison. I'm out there for 4 months or something like that. It was hideous. While I'm out there, my little guy, Dustin, was 10 months old or something. Carl can't handle all this. He can't handle the pressure of what's going on. The nursery is not dealing with things. Dustin is sick. Anyway, Nancy then Helgeson, now Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
She comes out from Flag to PAC, and she brings my little baby to me. I think Jennifer came out also because she was that. Yeah, I remember her being in the with the children, the daycare center. And I received Dustin, and he is emaciated. He's a 10-month-old baby, and he's like, freaked me right out. I took him straight across the street, which was like maybe a quarter mile away. It was the children's hospital. I took him in there. He was dehydrated and malnourished. Well, barley formula, I mean, whatever. I don't know. Anyway,
Right.
So then I had him on post with me while I'm being the temporary commanding officer of the West US again. It was just nuts. Just nuts. So, yeah, that kind of stuff began to stack up in my little pile of resentments, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Of things like, people need to understand too that when part of this belief system is that you are always responsible, no matter what happens to you, no matter who else does what. You're responsible for whatever condition or situation you're in, and you're responsible to get yourself out of it, no matter what anybody does to you. It just, beyond any kind of reason. Seriously, I know both of you can attest, and I'm sure a lot of viewers who went through similar things can attest that it becomes untenable.
Yep.
Anyway,
and you're a pawn in the organization. Basically, the organization is number one. So if you've got to go halfway across the world, and we don't care about your family and your kids, you've got to go do that because that's what's most important, and no consideration about family or kids or anything like that. It just, the goal is more important than that. That's the viewpoint that they have.
Your freedom of choice is taken away.
Oh, yeah, you don't have any. And then there's the looming threat that they're going to send all the children to Mexico. I was like, no, not my kid. You're not sending my children to Mexico. It didn't happen, not while I was there anyway. But I was under that threat constantly. While I was out, when I first got out to PAC to take over this mess and find somebody to take over the commanding officer job because the other guy didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, how come he gets to not want to do it anymore? I didn't get to not want to do something anymore. I had to do it, Anyhow, I walked in there. I could not believe it. In what was called the Programs Bureau.
Yeah.
The various staff working in a big office with their desks. They were covered in blue telexes. When I walked in, I said, what is this? This was insanity. This was Flag sending orders into this Flag Operations Liaison Office. Order after order, micromanaging something that's 3,000 miles away. It was insanity. I went over to the LRH communications person.
Right.
What was your title? LRH com?
LRH communicator.
Communicator, that's what it is. Bess Sullivan. Bess Sullivan. She was for the whole U.S., the LRH communicator. I said, this has to stop. This is ridiculous. I went to her because she was autonomous from the Flag line, which was running me. I said, somebody autonomous to that needs to know what's going on. I said, these people can't do their jobs. they cannot do their jobs. They've been trained to do their jobs, but they're not allowed to do them because they're sitting there fielding orders. And, you know, it was a violation of everything Hubbard put out there in terms of management style or policy. Was you train somebody up and let them do their job. You don't then get in there and micromanage it. And that's what was going on with that. So I got that all curtailed. It's like Flag was hands off of that organization for a while. Anyway, that all went to hell in a handbasket. But by the end of my tenure out there, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it was, and I was sent back to Flag in disgrace. Another failed mission. Oh. Well, yeah, I won't go into details about how that all happened. It was not good. And, you know, I don't know what they ever did with it. But so I busied myself. I went to the RPF again. That's what, or not again, my first trip to the RPF. So
at Flag.
At Flag.
In Clearwater.
Transfer. I first started in PAC, but then I was sent back to Flag and was in the RPF there and did that with Nomi Cook / Harrison.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we twinned up. We worked together and got ourselves through the rehabilitation project force program, and we came out. And when I came out, I then made what do they call them? Evaluator in the
in
Flag Bureau.
Eval and execution unit.
Yeah.
So I'm in there. I don't want to be there either. I can't stand Flag by this point of time. I cannot. I don't want to be anywhere. It's just starting to build, and it's like no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, no matter how hard I go, same thing was happening to my husband. Same thing was happening to so many other good people.
Right.
And I haven't even talked about the list one. Our S era was all going on. Also,
but let me just explain to people, and I've explained this before, where Flag was where the Commodore was. So the Avon River originally was the first flagship of the fleet. And then when he moved over to the Royal Scotsman became Flag. Right. So when we changed our name to the Apollo, right, wherever the Commodore was. So then when we moved ashore in 75, we were moving Flag to Clearwater. So though LRH wasn't there, Flag was basically where international management was, right, and the most senior organization for services, which is how you end up with Flag Service Org or the Flag Bureau, which did management, or the Flag Land Base, because now that Clearwater unit has become Flag. So even though Hubbard was in Dunedin or later in Los Angeles or La Quinta, that Clearwater location remained as Flag and is still Flag. Yeah. Yeah, so they retained the name, but originally it was the sea terminology, that wherever the Commodore of a fleet is called the flagship. So anyway, so they kept that name.
You were an evaluator.
Total hatred for anything to do with being there. It's like I can't disappear well enough, you know. Anyway, so there I am being an evaluator. And once again, I apparently was good at it. I'd sent my evals up and they got very minimal rejects, and I wasn't appreciated for that. Other people struggled. I didn't even know what I was doing when I was doing them. So I was not, I'm with the people who were upset because my things went through. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just following what it said in these policy letters about, you know, what was called the data series. I was just doing what it said, and, you know.
Well, you're talking to one of the best evaluators ever, Mark Fisher. He was one of the best Flag evaluators. Okay. And that's why he ended up being put in AVC because to authorize evals because
Yeah.
he was, no one could do them better than him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Well,
could
we
teach
should
them
have
how to do
challenged
it
each
too.
other, but that's not what you were doing when I knew you before.
No,
We
this is
could have had a
later. This is
contest.
after you were doing it. I would have been
We
able to
could have
help
had
you.
a contest. But oh God, I don't know if your people have been listening to these things and anybody has talked about stat pushing. What that
Yeah.
means is pushing people to produce beyond human. So I'm in there writing these evals and you know, Bern. What do I know about Bern, Switzerland? I know nothing about Bern, Switzerland, but I have to write this eval about Bern, Switzerland. And I have to translate the reports that go to Flag, and they're written in sort of broken European English with handwriting that's hard to read. Never mind. It was like nigh on impossible to do this stuff. And without eyes on in the place, you can't really figure out what's going on. So, but anyway, it skated through AVU and Hubbard and came right back down that the eval was done. It goes out to the org and they go, "What is this? This is silly." And it was. Anyway, after that, I think that a bunch of them went to came back. And suddenly they reorganized everything. And they put me in charge they make me PERSEC, personal secretary for eval and execution unit. I don't know what, Irene had been the one before that, and somebody else had been in that position. All of a sudden now I'm that position. And then I have the executive director international who's over that unit and the Flag Bureau, and it's Bill Franks.
Right.
God love Bill Franks. We became friends after everybody was out, but during the time, and he was a nice guy and he was a smart guy. But anyway, he while he's being the ED, he goes, he pulls me up to the conference room and we sit down and we're having a chat and I'm listening to him rattle off things that he thinks I should do. And I go, well, on one of the things I said, well, that sounds like a good idea. And he says, frankly, I think all my ideas are good. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. You didn't argue much. Then, so that was awful. I hated that. Then I'm made CO Flag Land Base. This marketing wanted me to talk about
Flag Land Base. Right.
Wanted me to talk about this.
And what that meant was
match my worst nightmare in life.
Well, let me explain real quick and tell me if I'm wrong. But as the commanding officer of the Flag Land Base, underneath you had like the Flag Service Orgs. Yeah, you had your husband. You had the Estates Organization, which was Mick Davies, and I don't know what other but you were basically over that.
All of the Estates Orgs.
Right, the area estates, which was all the other buildings, was Mike Revelle. Do you remember Mike Revelle?
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
It was area estates, public estates.
Right.
Public estates meant the Fort Harrison and wherever we housed public,
like the Sandcastle
people, right? The people that came, the public people that came and paid megabucks for their services also paid megabucks to stay in our rooms.
Right.
In our dilapidated rooms.
Organization. Lori Englehart was the CO of that.
Right.
And then Dave Revelle and his brother, in charge of those things, in charge of what we called the galley, which was basically a large cafeteria kitchen, like a hotel. I'm in charge of that. I'm in charge of the cadets, the kids.
Right.
Of Carl's organization, the service organization, where all the students and people are taking their classes. So I'm responsible for everything.
Yeah, well, and also at that time,
plus I have my own little org called the FLB.
Yes, and at that time, you had what? There was the Fort Harris and there was the CB, the original two buildings. Then there was the Sandcastle, and then there was the West Coast building.
WB.
Quality Inn.
CB, WB.
Quality Inn.
I'm responsible for those buildings, okay? The
and the Heart of Clearwater.
Sandcastle, the QI, the nursery,
and also there had to be I don't know how many staff there were in Clearwater, but it had to be 2,000 or 3,000 people. So when they were feeding people, they were feeding a lot of people.
Feeding a lot of people, and I don't remember how many there were. Thank God,
it was a lot.
I'm going to have nightmares as it is. So, one day I get an order, and this is the stat pushing and the cross orders you talked about a couple of sessions ago, Mark, that was going on all the bloody time. Phone call, Carrie on the phone, somebody else on the phone complaining about something. And meanwhile, I'm getting telexes from WDC and who's Watchdog Committee? Who's that?
Who is that?
And, somebody says, things are starting to go really haywire, like they hadn't already. And somebody does an evaluation and comes up with something or other. And I telex them back saying, well, geez, thanks for the backup. Oh, no, you should have done this yourself. I'm supposed to have done that job too? I'm supposed to. The whole idea was this was supposed to be a flag operation liaison office, but at the base.
Right.
It's supposed to be the same thing. I wasn't supposed to do all the evaluations on all those units, but I get a phone call from Carrie or a memo. It comes over to me and says, you need to have a baker on post by tomorrow. So can you imagine baking bread for those 2,000 people you're talking about?
Yeah. Plus
the public. I mean, So what are you going to do? Well, there's nothing to do but steal somebody from somebody else's staff.
Yeah.
So they have a fit and people start leaving. This is, I feel sorry for your listeners because there's no way to run this. There's no way to run this. So I painted enough of a picture about how insane it all really was. Yeah. You can't do this. It can't be done. But, loyal person that I was, I stuck it out for a long, long time. Then David Mayo does his famous eval on the FSO, and he finds me as the WHO. That means I'm the person who somehow managed to screw everything up in my husband's organization, and I'm responsible for it, and I get sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force again. Yeah, yep. And yes, I remember all those people. Gretchen.
Yeah, this is before you went to the Rehabilitation Project.
Yes, this is when I'm being CO FLB, I imagine.
Like land-based, yeah.
Yeah, I think that.
So you want to tell people who everyone is at the table?
Yeah, I was just saying, this is Gretchen over on with the glasses there in the foreground. Mm-hmm. And that's orange juice, people. I mean, apple juice or something. We didn't get treated to wine or anything like that. And then there's John Danilovich, which was Carl's immediate staff, and Mark Leiser. And the young lady there, I've forgotten her name. She was married to Frankie Friedman, I believe.
And you mean Franny?
No, it was Denise. Denise Friedman.
Denise.
Oh, okay.
It was Denise. And that's Tom Ondraka. He was my chief officer or something like that, in that position, whatever he called himself. He was in that position. And then Sue Henderson. I don't know why Sue Henderson.
Sue Anderson.
Anderson, beg your pardon.
Yeah.
She had a few names while I knew her. And then
yes,
Douglas, the estate staff. Yeah. And in the foreground is my husband, and I'm next to him, looking haggard and definitely not really smiling. Yeah. So when exactly that was taken, I don't know, but I was still on post, obviously. I hadn't gone to the RPF again yet. Anyway, so Mayo's eval expels me from the C organization, and there's a big non-interpolation order on the other side. What he had done is he read my husband's folders, his session folders, private counseling session folders, and my husband had been, we'd had marital concerns, upsets, arguments, whatever, and he was talking about them, and he was in the session getting his upsets, discussing them as you would expect would happen, and that information was used in the evaluation to find me to be the reason Carl couldn't perform on his job. It was absurd on its face, but that didn't matter. Mayo had a lot of clout, and I don't know. He came from the Infinite, the wherever it was in California, the secret place. He came from there.
La Quinta, yeah.
And it was just bizarre. Before that had happened, I'm sitting there trying to do my job, trying to keep up with everything, and it was, like I said, impossible. And one by one, all my people are being taken away. My staff members are being taken from me. Suddenly, it's me left with my poor captain, Dale, somebody. That's all that's left. So I'm 9 months pregnant with my third child, and I took myself off. I just closed this. Dale, I'll see you later. I'm out of here. And I walked over to the sandcastle where Mick Davies was the CO. And I said, well, Mick, they've taken everybody, and I can't do anything from there. So clearly I'm in trouble. Would you just put me to work? I just can't do anything real physical because I'm too pregnant. So a couple of days I spent, setting the tables for the people to eat and things like that. Then I went over to the Flag Bureau and a couple of days later and did whatever lower conditions and stuff like that. And then they put me in the Action Bureau, the Programs Bureau. Somehow Ken and Sue Krieger never implemented David Mayo's eval. I went to the RPF for 5 months. I was never able to get out of it. And I know I'm screwing up the time sequence on things because for a time after I had the baby, I was in the Programs Bureau for Africa. I was the Africa Programs chief.
So were you in the RPF when you were pregnant?
No.
Okay.
You had the baby before you went to the RPF?
It's totally muddled right now. I apologize.
Okay.
I wish I could figure it all out.
You don't need to go into that
Only
detail.
Years ago, but the significance of it all is that these kinds of things would happen to people willy-nilly. I was not alone.
Yeah.
Exactly. This stuff happened to people all the bloody time. I was sent to Africa. That was another episode where I'm out for 2.5 months. I'm in South Africa while I've got little children. Not the baby. I hadn't had the baby yet. So that was another thing. This stuff all stacked up. So when I finally was sent to the RPF, I'm there for about 5 months. Carl manages to write a petition to extricate me from the RPF, utilize me on staff somewhere in a low position to replace somebody else so he can get somebody to work in the service org with him. And this all gets approved by WDC. And then a mission is sent down by WDC, Watchdog Committee. And I'm only out for maybe a week or something like that. And by then, a finance mission came in, grilled Carl under lights and everything, just grilled him, and then sent him to the RPF.
Now, did they gang sec check him or just
something like that?
Gang sec check.
I don't want to attest what exactly happened to him because I wasn't in the room. I was in the garage, but it was horrible what they were doing to him. It was just the final straw. Vicky Asnaran and company, Mark Jaeger. They come out on a mission, and this is where I make my escape. She comes in and she declares suppressive Ken Urquhart, who was LRH's personal communicator, Hubbard's personal communicator,
and his former butler.
But former butler for decades, for a long, long time. Totally loyal person. They declare him and tell him to pack his bags and get out. And he ran trotting off to do that. And the next one they went to was Frankie Friedman. And he was another loyal person. Both of those were now, they were in the service org and they were doing counseling. So they had lost their executive positions long ago and they were doing the service work. And then, so he gets booted. Then she turns to me and says, well, do you always follow illegal orders? And I'm going, I don't really dare talk. I start to say, well, it was approved by WDC. She decided I wasn't eligible to be out of the garage. And so I thought, okay, whatever, I'm not saying anything. She says, well, you're back in the RPF. So I nod, I wait till they're out of the way. Carl, by that time, was assigned to the RPF and he was on his lunchtime with them, which was always after the regular crew. And I went in there to see him and I said, well, I've been reassigned to the RPF and I'm not going. I'm in shock, literally in emotional shock. And I go, I'm not going. He says, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. And I walked out. My job had been, I was out of the RPF. And while I was out of that position, I was made receptionist, working the PBX machine. Weird stuff. I had given up all my rank, given up my entire Kakan status, cut off all my hair. My hair was this long. After I was working in the garage and working in the fields and stuff, I had very long hair. It was not compatible with doing all kinds of outdoor sweaty work in Florida.
Right.
And I just said nuts with this. I can't manage this. I can't manage anything. I'm just a wreck. But I had somebody help me cut off all my hair. So I thought, I'm just trying to disappear emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, everything. I'm trying to disappear so they won't find me again and they won't hit me anymore. I'm done. I've done nothing but be loyal to this outfit and I'm crazy. So I walk out, I walk to the garage, which is where it was about 1 o'clock, and there's a van, a large van that goes out between the buildings and picks people up and drives them around. And one of the buildings they go to is where the nursery is. I hop on the bus. The rest of the RPFers are running around, scurrying around, taking orders, doing whatever. And I'm thinking, they're going to grab me and they're going to take me back. I got on the bus and I hid under the seat. And I had to hide under the seat for an hour because...
Now, is this a local bus or is this a bus that goes assigned to sealed bus?
The van that I was telling you about. The van that goes around to the buildings. So I get on that van and I hide under the seats. I don't want people to find me, obviously, but they're going to if I stick around. So I hide under the seat. And meanwhile, the driver is arguing with the motor pool person for a long time. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I got to get out of here. A long time. And then she takes off. It was a woman driver. She takes off. We got a couple of people on the bus. And after we get going, I then sit up. I get out to what's called the Quality Inn. We called it the QI because we abbreviated all our buildings. And that's where the nursery was. And that's also where our room was. It was literally an old Quality Inn hotel. That's right. And we had a room there and we had our belongings there. I picked up a tiny little suitcase, threw a baby blanket in it, a baby bottle, some diapers, a change of clothes for the children, essentials, whatever I could in a tiny suitcase. Carl had saved up $30. I had no money at all. I grabbed the car keys. We only had a car because his father had died 2 weeks before that, and his mother gave him the car. I took the car keys. I went out to the nursery, and Jennifer found me on the way there, my 10-year-old daughter, and she says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm gonna. Would you like to go see your dad?" And she says, "Are you blowing?" I said, "Would you like to go see your dad?" She says, "Well, I'd like to go see my daddy, but I don't want to blow Scientology. You know, even the children are indoctrinated." And I go, like, "I have to go. I can't stay right now. So you can come with me. I would love for you to come with me." People, please realize, listeners, there was no way for me to know that my husband wouldn't have turned me in if I told him I was doing this.
Exactly.
He were doing this, and he had these thoughts. I only found out later. I would have turned him in. That's what we're supposed to do. I probably wouldn't by that point, but I had no way of knowing how loyal he was or wasn't by this point. I didn't know what was in his mind, because everything, there was nothing, no secrets or anything.
Right. You're not allowed to talk about it.
No. Because of all those missions, which I laboriously told you about, I had been gone a great deal of time. Our middle child was only a couple of years old when I started doing those missions. And then he wasn't even that. It was 10 months. And then by the time we left, he was coming up on 5 years old, or he had just turned 5, I think. He was extremely close to his daddy, because daddy always was there, at least for the family hour. We got 1 hour a day time, and we got to have our children sleep in our room with us at bedtime. Some of the time I was in bunks in the garage, but anyway, but all that time that I was gone, my son became extremely attached to daddy, and there was no way I could separate him from his dad.
Right.
The daughter wasn't Carl's, so she was Tom's.
Tom Friendly, right? Your previous husband.
Tom Lovely.
Tom Lovely, sorry.
He was a friendly guy. Tom Lovely. Yeah. So he, so Carl wouldn't be responsible for Jennifer. And the baby, I haven't even said this story, but I was encouraged to not even have the child, because while I was COFLB, I was ordered to write a policy that said no more children were to be allowed at the base.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I turned up pregnant. I'm sorry that Carrie's not around now, but he was my savior on that one, because he pulled me aside when I discovered I was pregnant, and he says, "I want you to know," he was my boss, "I want you to know, whatever you decide is fine. You're not going to be offloaded." I had been told I would be offloaded. It was just crazy, crazy stuff.
You're talking about Carrie Gleason, right?
Carrie Gleason. He passed away this past year. And, but for a long time, he was my direct report, my boss. And, we used to have nightly staff meetings with him. And when this particular pregnancy happened, when I turned up pregnant, he was the person who was my boss at the time. And we'd go to the nightly staff meetings in his office. And he said, "I want you to know that we can deal with this. It's going to be fine." And I really appreciated that. And otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I would have been offloaded before not having the child, but I did receive pressure to have an abortion.
Right.
It wasn't severe pressure, but there was an implied, you shouldn't do this. This isn't the right thing. This isn't command intention. This isn't the greatest good for the greatest number. This is, that kind of stuff. And so,
What year was this?
That was 1982.
Okay.
Yeah.
My pregnancy was 1981, and I had him in April of 82. And then I'm in the RPF, but I was able to come home and stuff, and come back to our room at night so that I was still with the kids. Somehow I managed to nurse each of my kids through their early parts of their, the first few months of life, which was probably the thing that made them healthy little kids.
So Holly, go back. You were at the Quality Inn, and you're asking Jennifer if she wants to come with you.
Yeah, so I'm getting to that. Yeah. So now I'm back there. The baby is 7 months old. Jennifer is 10 years old, and I go back to the nursery, and I make an excuse that I've got some extra personal time, and so I'm going to take the baby and have some time off. And I scoop up the baby, and I take my daughter, and we get into the car, and I drove to the airport. I didn't even have a driver's license. I could drive, and I certainly knew my way to the airport because I'd been sent there many times in Tampa. And anyway, I put her in charge of the baby while I went into we didn't have cell phones, people.
No
cell phones. 1982.
To communicate. The only way to do it was to go in to the airport, use a phone, and I was pretty well known. So if I had been seen, I had to hide out in the phone booth.
Right.
For hours. And I placed a collect call to Tom Lovely, Jennifer's father. And he was off doing whatever. He sold cars or whatever it was that he was doing by then up in New Hampshire. And sorry, I just need to take a breath. So I left my little girl there, a 10-year-old child, and I told her, the car is locked. Don't open this car for anybody. Do not open the door. I don't care who comes. Don't open the car to anybody. Look after the baby. I'll be back in a few minutes. I left the windows on a crack. It was warm. It was Halloween, 1982. And I went into the phone booth, made these calls, went running back out, check on the kids. They're okay. Went running back in, trying to get the calls. I'm seeing Scientologists running back and forth, catching their flights and whatnot. And I'm scared to death I'm going to be caught because I know if I get caught, I'm going to be dragged back. They're going to come and get me. They're going to talk me into it. They're going to make me do it. And I would have been weak enough that I would probably go with it.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was committing a crime. It was awful. It was awful. But I just had to stay the course. I had to get out of there. I didn't tell so many things. I couldn't keep the children in clothing. The clothing would disappear. The shoes were lost every week. We didn't have money to replace the shoes. It was insane. My daughter's in 2nd grade. She can't read because Scientology doesn't know how to teach kids how to read, and they took them out of the public school.
Oh, okay.
It was just, I can't say it enough how insane it was. Anyway, Tom Lovely, bless his heart, he prepaid a ticket for me and Jennifer each, tickets for us to fly up to Boston or to New York, and then from New York to Boston. So we get to the Kennedy Airport in New York, and we have to wait till the morning for the next flight to Boston, and we're sitting there. This little mother, her 10-year-old, and an infant sitting on a bench all night.
Now, were you worried of security coming looking for you while you're sitting there?
In New York, no, because nobody in New York was going to know me. But in Tampa, yeah, sure. That's why I kept running back and forth, hiding in the phone booth.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, it was just a horrific thing to leave a child behind and take the other two. It was like, it certainly wasn't as severe as Sophie's Choice, but that had a similarity to it.
Yeah.
And I felt horrible about it. When we got to New Hampshire, I asked him, would you please look after the children for a little bit. I need to take a nap. He put me in a back room and I fell asleep for 12 hours. 12 straight hours. Never woke. And when I got up, by then, we were always exhausted. By then, and we were still loyal. Idiots. We were still loyal because we believed all the stuff we were taught for, our whole, as youngsters into our young adulthood, we believed all that.
And you've put your eternity at risk by leaving.
In your own mind.
My guilt
Yes.
was, then I've not only ruined my own personal freedom, I have ruined the freedom for my children. It was just hideous. Looking back, I see it as hideous. At the time, I'm just completely freaked out.
Oh, yeah.
Shock. I don't know what to do. I finally wake up and I get a phone call, and of course, they're trying to bring me back. So Jim Veneer's on the phone. By then, he's in the RPF, and he's saying, we'll just come on back. We'll get you cleaned up. Everything will be okay.
It'll all be good. Yeah.
No, it's not happening, Jim. I'm sorry, it's not happening. And meanwhile, Carl had his own escape. He did the same thing. He waited until the end of the day. They had a guard outside his door.
Because you had left.
I had left, and they knew that Carl would either come after.
Yes, so they were guarding him.
Guard on him.
Yeah. And
so he was, spent the evening with our other son, the 5-year-old, 4-year-old, and then after everything, he convinced the guard, look, Bill, everything's fine. Bill Price, go home to your family. I'll be fine, and we'll work on it all tomorrow. No worries. And then Carl happened to have an American Express card that he never used, except for when we retrieved Jennifer after she was taken up to New Hampshire when she was 4 years old. Anyhow, so he took that card and he went over next door to another motel that was there, and called a taxi. The taxi came and got him. And as he's telling the taxi driver the story, the taxi driver never billed him for any of it. He just for the trip to the airport.
He was probably happy to help get someone escaped.
He was absolutely
how,
happy.
How long after you left did Carl leave?
That night.
Oh, was it the same night or the next night?
Yeah.
That night.
Wow.
Had we known, we could have planned it differently. We could have.
Right. Could have done it together. Yeah.
We could have. Yeah. But, hindsight. I didn't.
So when he left, he took your son with him, and then did he connect with you up in New Hampshire? Is that what happened?
Yeah. He went to his mother's in Detroit, in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. And, because he also used the American Express card to get a flight. And then his mom picked him up, and then he called from there, and everything else was just logistics, figuring out how to get me back there. So life started anew, but it didn't stop them from trying to get us, because within the following year, they called me up and wanted me to run the Detroit org. It's like, are you serious? And they wanted Carl to go out to St. Hill, to back again. Like, are you kidding?
Everything's forgiven. It's okay.
Yeah.
You come back.
Yeah, there's an amnesty. Yeah. All you got to do is write up your crimes. And it's like, oh my God, by then, I had nightmares. I want to say this because this was how traumatic it was. I literally had horrendous nightmares of being pulled back in, held against my will, talked into staying, talked into doing another mission, talked in every single night, without exception. One of them was so horrific. I thought I was going down this horrible tube and blackness, and all these evil demons were coming at me. It was just, I woke up just, it was awful. That kind of stuff. This constitutes a harmonic of post-traumatic stress disorder, which I came to learn a lot about. and was able to deal with. But it took some years to deal with this. My first year out, that happened every day. Every single day, I had these nightmares of being pulled back in. But look, guys, I'll come back and help you, but I can only stay a little bit. I'm not staying. Those are my dreams. And then it's like, and then you're stuck and you can't get out. But wait, oh, horrible.
Oh, I had nightmares. I'd be back on Messenger watch with Hubbard. And it's like, how the hell did I end up here?
Yep.
I did too. I had similar. They went on off and on for several years, but then they eventually went away. Let me ask you this: how relieved were you to actually all of a sudden now you can sleep and eat when you want and spend time with your kids and all that? Was that hard to get used to after all those many years of being denied?
Despite all the stuff that I have expressed here about what a basket case I was, I'm actually a pretty strong person, and I actually am. And I just pulled from what I knew, what I did know from my mother. She was incredibly resourceful, raising 6 kids. And the way she did, I mean, it was a difficult upbringing for sure, but she did do this stuff. And she'd been a single child herself. So how she found the wherewithal to do what she had to do to raise us, but she taught us things, and I just employed everything I learned. And then I also had the end of the nightmares, by the way, happened when my sister told me that she gave me a couple of phone numbers of people who had left. One of them, I think, was Frankie Friedman. Another was Carl Barney, or maybe it was the Riverside guy. I don't remember now for sure. I used to think it was Ken Urquhart, but Ken Urquhart assured me, no, it was never him. But Ben Corey, no, it might have been. Anyway, those 2 people. I said, so how do you rectify? In your mind, how do you balance the craziness, the real world, against the craziness we just came out of last year or whatever, whenever they did? And they said they don't. They just said, well, it was all bullshit. And I was like, wow. And my sister had said so as well, and her husband, they have their whole story. Her first husband, second husband, and so they escaped out of it. And so after the nightmares and everything stopped, to answer your question, Carl's mother was just a peach. She was just a wonderful, wonderful woman. And she just took me under her wing. This poor woman had just lost her husband 2 weeks before we got there.
Right.
And so she taught me what to do in a grocery store, how do you
go grocery shopping,
how to go grocery shopping, how to get gas in a car. She helped me get a driver's license. I forget all the things, but just we lived with her for a few months until Carl got a position where we could then get a small house, and which we did within 5 months. We had our own house in our own neighborhood, and I started digging up the backyard. I made a veggie patch and did all this stuff, and I made all my kids clothes for school, and I'd learned those skills as a kid. Womack. So I was able to use that stuff, and I just closed the door on the rest of it. But I was afraid they would come after us. So I'd walk my kids to school and make sure that I'd pick them up, and they sent me letters to collect money from me. And finally, I told when I finally added it all up, if they had ever even paid me minimum wage for all the work that I did for that organization,
they owed you money.
They owed me $350,000 or something. I calculated. If minimum wage was $2.80. I mean, whatever. They owed me. They tried to tell me I owed $150,000. I don't remember the number for services and stuff. I go, wait a minute, I worked for all that. Whatever I got.
Exactly. for our viewers, when you leave the Sea organization, they assign what's called a freeloader debt to you, and that's basically you have to repay all the services you got from Scientology while you were on staff because you broke your contract, if you ever want to get back involved in Scientology again and not get declared or whatever. So, you know, it's outrageous because they pay you nothing, and then they try and charge you for all these services. It's ridiculous.
Well, when I got I actually still have some of those letters. Carl had he kept a folder, and I looked at them before one of our interviews. I think maybe the first one. I got all turned up inside just looking at those things. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
One of them, when I finally decided, I wrote back on the thing saying, you know, how dare you? How dare you call me a freeloader after I put in 15 years of hard work, good work, good numbers for you, complete loyalty. You can call me a freeloader?
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know, before Hubbard disappeared at the end of 79, I was working on a staff pay project with him, and I'd noticed there was a problem where people couldn't afford to come back in the Sea Org because they couldn't pay their freeloader debt, or they couldn't get back on services because they had to pay a freeloader debt in order to do that. So, and at that time, the Guardian's office was having all these Sea Org members sign 5-year contracts, and I'd heard that they were doing 5-year contracts because they couldn't hold anyone's feet to the fire for a billion-year contract.
Right.
So I proposed, and Hubbard approved it. We went back and forth over this with many discussions. I proposed that every 5 years, one slate would be cleaned. And every year you did 20% of your freeloader debt that would build up over 5 years would be wiped away if you left. And that way it allowed people to come back in if they wanted to.
Did they use this?
They did
until Janice left and Hubbard was gone and Miss Gavage canceled the whole thing.
Well, I hate to say it, James, that was a brilliant idea and a very loyal thing to do, but aren't you glad that it's not happening now?
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't want to help people go in there.
Well, I know. Well, they tried
going to do to them what happened to me and my family and so many of my friends. Just no way.
Oh yeah, well they tried to send me like this $250,000 freeloader debt. I'm like, no, it don't changed. It should only be less than that.
And it is brainwashing. It is brainwashing because when I first joined the Sea Org in 1976 out of high school, I lasted 30 days. I did the Welcome to the Sea Org tapes, and that was it. And I went, ooh, this isn't for me. And I left, and I had a $2,000 or $3,000 freeloader debt. And I was still so brainwashed because my father was in Scientology, was a mission holder and all that after about a year, I decided, you know what, I made a mistake. I need to come back. And then I ended up getting a loan and paying off that freeloader debt in order to come back. You know what I mean? It's just the power. It's the power with the prison of belief. Lawrence Wright calls it in the book.
Lawrence Wright.
It was so
and people should read that.
As an 18-year-old, I was like, I have to go back, you know?
There are a number of books that people can look at to help explain how it is that people can get trapped in outfits like this, cults like this. It's not, we're not stupid people, and so you wonder, well, how could this possibly happen? It can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody. You find the right thing. I mean, for me, as a young kid, wanting to have a meaningful life, I wanted to help people. I was not going to do it in a little podunk place that I was in. The situation that I was in, it wasn't going to happen that way. And this comes along, and the people I most admire tell me that this is here and I can do this. And well, somebody else went into it for the mystique and the science of it. Somebody else goes into it for another reason, and you get hooked because it's all intriguing, it's interesting, and Hubbard holds out these secrets that you're going to get to. You're going to find out what they are. And, you know, I've always been a loyal worker person. I was not even that interested in the secrets. I just wanted to do good. I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
As did I, and everybody, I think, wanted to get involved because they wanted to help people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also
you got to be a nurse. That actually did help people.
Yeah. And you got to remember, this was back in the 60s too. And I talked to Kimma Douglas about it as to, well, why would my mother give up her 3 children and let us be living on a ship for 8 years, you know, while she's in Los Angeles running Celebrity Center? And Kimma's whole view is she did the same thing with her own daughter, Kelly.
I know.
She lost her daughter.
Also, it wasn't Shane.
Right.
Yeah.
So Kimma said, you got to remember that at that time period, there was the Vietnam War going on. There was the atomic bomb. There was the Iron Curtain with Russia, the Cold War. Yeah, and so all this stuff was going on. So it was like, oh my God, our children are not going to have a future. So that's where they put themselves totally into doing all this and ignoring the children who was the future.
That's and then totally true. And the other thing to keep in mind is Scientology taught that you live multiple lives. You are not just, you know, Holly Carlson. I was whoever I was for many lifetimes. And so the being separated from our children temporarily was not to be considered a major deal. It was
right. Yeah, and I was going to say,
we would get back together. You know, that would happen. We'd get back together. They would be Sea Org members too.
And it was such a small amount of time compared to 1 billion years.
Yeah. Compared to 1 billion years, this is a drop in the bucket. And it'll all be accomplished by the time, you know.
And I was going to say, Holly,
Mark,
for me,
I just had to get that out.
That's okay. I was going to say, for me, when I first got out, nothing interested me because what I felt like I lost the most was my purpose in helping others, right?
Yeah.
And it took me several months. It wasn't until we all got together, Janice and Paul and Terry and all that, and we decided, well, let's go into business together and let's try and make a life.
Right.
That after a while, I realized that I was helping people if I helped them buy a house. I was helping people if I helped them refinance and improve their debt. So it kind of refurbished that purpose in me. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that was a very good realization that you had, Mark. I didn't quite have it like that, but I knew what my job was to raise those children. And so I did. But I was going to say something else that.
Well, and then you became a nurse too, which also was helping people.
Oh, when I first, within the first couple of years when I was out, I hit the skids depression-wise. I was depressed. And like the purpose thing in a part, you know, once the children are in school and whatever, I don't remember exactly what years it was. It was our first 5 years out. So I sought some counseling. So I see this counselor and he was a jerk. It didn't work, but I do remember telling him, I said, look, I've been to the mountaintop, so to speak. There's nothing else. There isn't anything. I've been promised and told all of this, and now I've learned that it's a sham, right? That's why I'm depressed. It's like there isn't anything that replaces that. Well, that wasn't quite true, but there was nothing I was aware of. And it took, I had a lot of counseling over the years in different ways. And finally, helped me. Besides just living and doing a lot of reading and studying on my own and so on. You know, I mean, you can't go through something like that and just walk away and do nothing. Or if you do, it was a tremendous amount of healing had to take place.
Absolutely.
I can say today that even though some of the memories are painful for me still, I've healed very well from all of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to acknowledge you, Holly, because you got yourself trained as a nurse. And as some of our friends were dying, you would go to their bedside and you helped them through the hospice. And when Paul was dying, I remember so many phone calls between you and me, with you explaining things to me and advising me on different things. And that's really, you know, a spot in my heart for you because of what you have accomplished, and you use that to help others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I 100% agree.
well, thank you. Thank you. That's very, very kind. It is a passion of mine. It'll always be a passion of mine to work with people. And hospice was I did all kinds of nursing, but I really, really appreciated hospice. And, you know, I'd love to have been able to be there for a lot of people that have passed. But yeah. Anyway, the kind of work you guys are doing is fabulous. And I do hope people are understanding and a bit more tolerant of some of us crazy folks like me.
No,
well, I think it shows them we're not that crazy.
No, exactly. Well, Janice, this is a good point. This is a good spot for us to end off here now.
I did have somebody ask me, well, why did you stay in so long? You know, it's like, you know, you'd have to understand. This is not an easy question to answer.
You gotta have been there.
Well, right. You may want to take this thing and split it in half somewhere, because I think we've been at this for about an hour and 40 minutes or something.
Hour and 40 minutes. But that's right. We'll figure that part out. But anyway, I just wanted to say, Holly, thank you so much for being here on our show. And I want to say to our viewers out there, please subscribe to the channel. It helps us get the message out to other people, you know, to help them understand what everybody went through in Scientology and also in other cults, you know. So please subscribe to the channel. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please ask them down below in the comment section. Holly, Janice, and I, we review them all and we answer them if you've got a question. So please do so. And then also, if you would like to support our channel, you can donate to us by buying us a coffee. There's a link down below. You just click on it, follow the instructions, and it's just a way for you to support our channel. Holly, I wanted to again thank you for being here. It's been very wonderful and reminiscing with you. And you know, the thing is that we came out on top. You know what I mean? Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we probably did. Most of us did, and I'm grateful for that. Very grateful for that.
Yeah,
you guys have had a big part in it, and so did the earlier group, the Yahoo group that Mick Wenlock did. It's like a lot of people were salvaged out of this thing because of groups like his and yours, what you're doing, and what Rinder has done, and Leah Remini, whom I never met, but Mike I knew. And others. So keep up the great work, guys. I love you both.
Great. Thank you for having
me. It's been very therapeutic.
Good.
Oh, no problem, Holly. Stick around, okay? And we'll talk on the other side of this, okay? Until next time, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.